Thank you very much, Idris, for this very kind and very elaborate introduction about me. Anyway, in alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, assalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Safa Education Foundation, organizer of this webinar, thank you very much to give me the opportunity to participate in this discussion with a little introduction from my side. Although initially I thought that this talk would be a little longer, but just now Dr. Idris mentioned that it will be half an hour. So I shall try to wrap up everything I can within this time limit. Before, may I share my screen, Dr. Idris?
Yes, please, can you make him the host so that you'll be able to share?
Okay. You can see that, right? Is that clear?
It's clear.
It's clear. You can see it.
Very clear, Prof. You can see the slide.
Okay, great. So the topic given to me is about medical and spiritual benefits of fasting. Now, before I, start to share my personal vision or observation about this particular topic, I must, confess that I am not very expert in a theological perspective. So my talk will not be very much, Islamically inclined. So it will be more basically from scientific point of view, that what I have experienced. And later in this part, I shall also try to relate it with the Ramadan or fasting, the particular, prayers that we have as a Muslim. Now, if you look at this topic, then there are two, key terms that I see. One is the medical and another the spiritual in terms of benefits. So in my understanding, I took it in this way that we are referring to medical and spiritual health. So in other words, that, in a nutshell, we can say this is all about health. So what I'm going to tell you is that I shall share with you my view about what does it mean by the term good health. And later on, I shall also try to explain what does it mean by the, the concept is about the sickness. And finally, I shall, try to touch about my understanding about this Islamic medical model, that how these health and sicknesses can be defined from Islamic teachings. And of course, towards the end, I shall try to relate it with the fasting. So please bear with me with next, 30 minutes and so on. So let me begin with this question, for myself and for all of you, for which I'm not going to give any answer to it right now, but I hope that towards the end, we shall find an answer to this question. The question is that, is health a balance between to be or not to be sick, right? So here the key word is again, the sickness or being sick. So if we do not sick, does it mean we are healthy? And if we say that we are sick in what perspective? That is the important question. So in summary, we can ask this question in a way again, that is health a balance between to be or not to be sick? Now, if we look at this individual that I'm just taking a photograph from the internet and put this photograph in the region of United States. And in United States, I'm referring to the developed country. And if we look at the people of these developed countries, they normally live a long life, like 85 years in the average lifespan, and they are healthy in a sense. On the other hand, if we look at this individual, which I put in the African continent, but she is basically representing the poor developing nations all over the world. And their average lifespan is less than 70 years, which is close to 65 years and so on. Now, if we compare the health of these two individuals, apparently we shall conclude that the person who is coming from the developed country, they are having a long life, and they're healthy. But if we try to switch their position, for example, if the person from the poor developing country, she goes to a developed country, she will not face any challenges. She will live there quite easily, and and she will not have any sickness so easily. On the other hand, if you look at the individual from a developed country, they are transferred to a poor developed nation, a developing nation, then they will face a lot of health challenges, and that is quite natural. Now, considering these two issues, we can ask this question to ourselves, that who is healthy then? Is it the person who is having a long life but is unable to cope with the environmental challenges, and do not have a good health, they cannot enjoy a good health without medication, without healthcare facilities, or the person who can enjoy good health wherever the person is going, irrespective of whether this is a rich country, poor country, clean or some kind of dirty environment, and so on. So this is a very crucial question for myself, that how do we define health and who is healthy? So again, I'm not giving any answer to that. Hopefully we shall find it towards the end, and you shall see that how these questions are related to our practice of fasting. So this is a question that I'm asking again in a different form, that does health means a dependency on the healthcare facilities? Nowadays, if we look at ourselves, that we go for health checkup regularly, 6 months, 1 year, or yearly basis, and we take medicines every day, for various reasons. And many people, they are suffering from different sickness, for example, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and many forms of sickness. And they're having a good lifespan because they are more dependent on the modern medicine or drugs. Now, this dependency on the healthcare facilities, does it mean that we are healthy or not? And this question is valid, is because if we think about our earlier generations, our grandparents and so on, we can see that they did not have any dependency on the healthcare facilities, but yet they did not suffer from any sickness, and they had a long lifespan, generally speaking. So again, the questions comes to our mind again and again, that what does it mean by a good health? So to find an answer to that question, if we look at all these, 4 or 5 definitions that I am highlighting here, and you can look at this modified WHO definition of what is good health. And according to that, a healthy state is a continuous process of adjustment with the changes in self and environment. So this is how WHO define a good health or a healthy state. It means, in other words, that we must have the ability to adjust with any environmental changes or anywhere that we want to go, we want to face. Natural environment I'm talking about here. So that is referring as a good health. Now, the other definition, which is referring to a state of global balance within oneself and within the environment, again, which is very close to the definition, modified definition of the WHO. Here it means that the good health means is a state where an individual can have a holistic balance or a global balance within himself and with the environment. The last one, the last definition that I'm highlighting here, which is basically not highlighting anything referring to physical health, but it is more on the spiritual health. And a good health or a healthy person is referring to those who have the ability to fulfill their spiritual purpose. That's what it means by the good health. Now, if you combine all these definitions, then again, we can go back to the question that I have highlighted in the earlier 3 slides, and we can try to find an answer to it. So to answer to that again, I am bringing here a very simple model, although it looks complicated. But if you focus it in the central part of it, you can see that I'm here highlighting an individual human being who have organs in terms of the body, and also he has a heart, a major organ, as well as a brain. And of course, a living human body means that he has a soul, he or she has a soul. Now, if we look at the function of the heart, it basically, gives us the ability to, rationalize things. We become motivated. We have emotions coming from the heart. Our desires are also, our heart is a house of it. And our brain is giving the function like attention, thinking, recognition, and which eventually help us to receive some message and memorize things and so on. Our other organs, for example, our lung is involved in the respiration, our digestive system in the digestion, and our blood circulation is involved in the blood circulating system and so on. Now, if these are the functions, all these functions that many of them, we basically can measure it. We can, visibly perceive it. For example, our respiration, our digestion, our circulation, that we can measure them. But some other functions of our bodily parts, for example, conscience, our rationality, motivation, or our attention, thinking, those really cannot be measured so easily, and you cannot see them easily. And the function that we have related to all those, all those organs, it can give us some kind of sickness if those functions are imbalanced. For example, if our attention, thinking, recognition, or the brain function imbalanced, so we have, disease like autism, epilepsy, dementia, all those kinds of forms of disease. Again, if we have a disease in our heart, what we call as a disease of the qalb from Islamic term, in terms of the rational thinking, motivation, emotion, desire, then we have a sickness like vengeance, cruelty, jealousy, all arrogance, hypocrisy. These kind of sickness is also there. Besides this, we also have other form of disease, which is more common and which we see and which we mostly count in our life regularly, which are like cancer, diabetes, hypertension, as I mentioned. So these are also a form of disease which is coming from the imbalance of our cellular or molecular biological functions. And some of them are also caused by some form of pathogens. Now, from this slide, what you can take it for your thinking is that we have two different kinds of sickness. One sickness is which is physical sickness that we can actually see in terms of the symptoms, and another kind of sickness that we really cannot diagnose in terms of symptoms, biological, clinical diagnosis and so on, but it is manifested in our behavior, in our attitude, in our manners and so on. Now, this is a question that I want to ask to ourselves again, at this juncture of our discussion, that who can guide us to be healthy? Or in other words, who can guide us, tell us that, okay, this is a state of sickness or this is a state of good health. To highlight it, I want to bring to your attention one good information which was published in 1961. During that time, scientists were advocating or promoting the concept that dietary fat can basically cause cardiovascular diseases. So this was promoted very actively, and people started stopping eating any dietary fat. And if you notice, or if you have time to check it, you shall see that this is the time when basically obesity started to grow. And this is mainly because later on we identified that people started avoiding dietary fat, and they were more prone to take carbohydrates, so they become more obese, and some other form of diseases are there. But ironically, what happened is that in 2014, 40 or 50 years later, this scientific hypothesis actually is reversed. So scientists come with a new thesis that no, it is not the fat which can cause the coronary artery diseases, it is something else. So by the time the damage is already done, it means that the other form of disease, because of the excessive consumption of carbohydrate or lower consumption of the important fats, is already done there. So this is how you can see that this is just one example that how we do not have any universal guideline for us to remain healthy. So our human experience basically cannot tell us for sure that this is a certain way to remain healthy, or this is a certain way or confirmed way that you can avoid any form of sickness. This is just one example, but similarly, you can find many examples from Food and Drug Administrations. They're from their perspective that you shall see many drugs were approved, but later on it was withdrawn because of their harmful effects. Now, what is spirituality? This spirituality can be defined from two perspectives. One is with the recognition of the existence of supreme authority for this whole universe. And another form of spirituality can be defined without believing or without giving recognition to the supreme authority of the universe. In either way, the spirituality basically is coming or describing all these forms of characteristics that I am highlighting here, which is the forgiveness, kindness, compassion, justice, integrity, and so on. So these are the criteria or these are the aspects of spirituality. Now, this is how different people define spirituality, with or without the acceptance of the Allah in our sense. But to me, connection with Allah is the spirituality. That's what I believe, and I must say that this is this is my personal perception. Some of you may have a different way to explain it, but to me, connecting with our supreme authority of the universe, which is Allah, that is a spirituality. And I shall try to link that how this spirituality is connecting to our physical or psychological health as well. Now, a few examples of highest level of spirituality, I want to highlight it here. Many of you, I think most of you know it very well, that Nabi Ibrahim, who was named as Ibrahim Khalilullah, friend of Allah. So he is an example of who achieved the highest level of spirituality. Another example is Prophet Musa, Nabi Musa alayhi salam, who Allah spoke to him. So again, this is a highest level of spirituality. Similarly, we have the example of Prophet Isa and his mother Maryam, and then we have the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our beloved prophet, the last prophet. He also went up above the sky and meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the highest example of spirituality in our knowledge. Now, definitely we can say for sure that we cannot achieve any of those spirituality in our lifetime, but still this is the month of Ramadan when Allah revealed Quran to us that we know, and this is the Quran that where we can connect ourselves with Allah, because when we read Quran we can see that Allah is talking to us, and when Allah is talking to us, we are listening to his command, we are listening to his warning, we are listening to that he loves us in different ways. So when you listen to his words, then in other words, we are actually talking to him. And this is where the Ramadan is coming to the scenario in spirituality, in my perspective, that Allah revealed Quran in the month of Ramadan. And this is the Quran is a living miracle for us that helps us to connect with Allah, or that helps us to achieve the highest level of spirituality in our lifetime. Now, what is the scale of spirituality, or how do we measure it? If all of us, we know that there is the second verse of the Surah Baqarah where Allah says that Zalikal Kitabu la rayba fihi hudan lil muttaqin. And Allah, we know that this Quran is given to mankind for the guidance. The first condition to be guided by the Quran is that we have to have a fear of Allah. In other words, we have to have the understanding that Allah exists, who has a supreme authority of the universe, who created everything. So once we know it, once we have the fear of Allah, or once we have the feeling of the existence of Allah, then we embrace Islam by saying La ilaha illallah, and of course add to that is the Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we become Muslim. And when we read the Quran, then we shall see that there are more than 80 verses which is addressed to Mu'min. Allah says that Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, and he gives a number of instructions there. So a Muslim then start to follow the instructions given to Mu'min, and they become Mu'min. And finally, a Mu'min can become a successful Mu'min if we recite Surah Mu'min, where Allah says Qad aflahul mu'minun allazina hum fi salatihim khashi'un, and so on. So here, for Mu'min or for Muslim, it is obligation for us to pray 5 times, for example. But for a successful Mu'min, or to become a successful Mu'min, we not only have to pray, but we have to pray with a khushu. So what I want to say here is that from my personal understanding is that the spirituality also increases from having a feeling of existence of Allah, or becoming a muttaqi, and then towards a successful Mu'min. And of course, it's a cycle that a successful Mu'min is a successful or a higher level of muttaqi, and so on. Now, the people who have higher level of spirituality, they basically will have a lower or disease of the qalb. And these diseases I am highlighting some of them, is pride, greed, anger, vengeance, and so on. we shall see, later on in a while, that how these kind of, disease of the calf is connected to our disease of the physical health and physical sickness. Before I do that, I want to, go through this small slide I have prepared, where I have shared with you that we have three domains of health. One is individual health, second one is social health, and third one is environmental health. Now, in the individual health, we have three, subdomains that I say. One is spiritual well-being, and then physiological well-being, and psychological well-being. Now, if you notice it, that I put spiritual well-being at the bottom, and all other subdomains and domains are basically standing on top of our of it, just to highlight with you. For example, physiological well-being means that how well we sleep or how we'll take rest, how cleanliness we maintain in our lifetime, how much balanced diet we follow, and so on. So in every subdomains, you have different components, and all of them are important for us to remain healthy. And it all starts with our some kind of problem. And if we look at it, okay, if you look at it, then you can see that our physical or psychological state, most of the time, it depends on some kind of, we are all stressed, for job, for our economic situation, for our social unrest, racial unrest. Many of those stress are causing psychological, imbalance or physical imbalance as well. So, at the root of the physical or psychological state, it is not only genetic or the infection, but also our increased expectation and competition in this modern world. They are contributing to it. And then if we even go further, then we shall see that it is basically lack of our patience, tolerance, satisfaction, and all these form of, individual attributes responsible for the stressful competitive environment in our own life and in our society as well. So that's why, we may have a area of, or a very vast area of scope to define what is disease. We can define by the very root of all those now. These spiritual and psychological well-being are very important in the modern world, is because we have a phenomenon in the molecular biology which is called as epigenetic modification. I shall not take a lot of time for this part, but briefly, this is something. What it means is that due to our lifestyle, we basically can cause a lot of genetic modifications in our own health, in our own body. It is not inherited modifications by ourselves because of our lifestyle. And once we do that, and if we have a next generation, then that modification can goes or transfer to the next generation. In other words, we basically can create a new disease in our health, in our body, by our lifestyle, and we can transfer that disease to our next generation. This is what is all about the epigenetic modification. And if you look at the literature, you shall see, so here's there are some of the examples that I'm showing here, that if you look at it, the left-hand side, a lot of diseases which are connected with the epigenetic modifications. And if you look at them, majority of them have a common symptom, which is intellectual disabilities. Now, besides these diseases, we also have a range of cancer, which are very common now in many parts of the world. And majority of them are coming because of the epigenetic modifications. Now, what I'm trying to tell you with this slide is that these kind of diseases did in the new generations, and these are happening because second one is depression, and third one is stress, and all those form of practices that we have, including alcohol drinking, it can cause some form of unnecessary epigenetic modification, and then it will eventually lead to inflammation and mutation, and it is causing many diseases, as I showed in the earlier slide. But it will also create more and more diseases, especially in our older ages, and it may even pass to the next generation. So today's lifestyle basically can be a reason for the or cause for the disease in the future. Now, I'm going to share with you some of my understanding about the Islamic model of health and disease. So here I'm going to show you with 4 different principles. I'm not going to describe all the Quranic verses and hadith that I highlighted here, but I shall only show you what is the principle about. The first principle that I think is that sickness is considered as a benediction. So because it can expiate sins. So the first principle of health and sickness is that sickness is a benediction. Second principle that I derive from different Quranic verses and hadith is that good health is a blessing. Sorry, excuse me. And the third principle is Allah sent cure for every disease except aging and health. This is the third principle. And the fourth principle is cure needs divine intervention. It means that if somebody is sick, he or she will not be cured without the approval of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if we combine these 4 principles together, and if we put them side by side, and then if we compare them, let's say if you compare between the principle number 1 and principle number 2, then we shall see there's an apparent contradiction. Is because if disease is a benediction because it can expiate sin, then why Allah should send a cure for a disease? Because Allah said that Allah sent cure for all diseases except aging and death. So it seems that they're apparently contradictory to each other. Similarly, if you compare between principle number 1 and principle number 3, if disease is a benediction and good health is a blessing, then how come we sustain either good health or disease? So again, there is a contradiction. Similarly, all those 4 principles, if you compare, then we can find one or another form of contradiction with that. Now, here again comes the ultimate spirituality as a human being, which is the iman or faith. It starts from the iman or faith. And if we have iman or faith, then only we can resolve all this contradiction. And here again, we can remember the story of Nabi Idris alayhi salam that you all of you know, just for our reminder, that he once started to become sick, and he becomes sick to the extent that all his family members left him except one wife, and he lost all his wealth. But he never asked for the cure. He never attempted to get rid of the sickness. But once he started to have a sickness in his tongue, only then he prayed to Allah that he should not take his tongue, because then he would not be able to call Allah, the beloved name. And this is how much they are connected with Allah, and how much they consider health and sickness in terms of spirituality. So with this story and with these 4 principles, what I'm trying to remind myself and share my feeling with you is that whether we are sick physically or whether we are sick mentally or psychologically, it all will depend on how we are spiritually connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is how, again, it is coming to our practice in Ramadan, that Ramadan basically can help us to attain to help with our spirituality. As I mentioned earlier, that this is the month where Allah revealed Quran to us, and Quran is a connection between us and our Creator. At the same time, this is the month where we are trying to abstain from food and drink for the certain period of time, for example, from sunrise to sunset. We are refraining ourselves from sinful acts such as cursing, lying, and all form of uh, toxic emotion like anger, hatred, and so on. So this is Ramadan, who is helping us to attain these kind of characteristics. At the same time, this is all these characteristics of Ramadan is basically helping us to become healthy. So I shall just highlight one of these, scientific evidence that how periodic starvation or fasting can help us with a good health. And this is a paper which was published somewhere in 2016, I believe. Is defined a phenomenon what they call is autophagy. It can be degraded, it can be decomposed, and then the components of this dead cell can be reused to form a new cell or to form a new energy for our energy metabolism. At the same time, this autophagy, which can be achieved during this periodic starvation or fasting, it can also help to kill bacteria and viruses. So in other words, all this scientific evidence is helping us to understand that fasting as I said, that spirituality also can be achieved during this fasting. I'm not going to talk about in detail about these things, but in generally, in summary, I can say that toxic emotions like anger and hatred, which we can reduce by our practice of fasting, and this will also help boosting our immune system with certain hormonal balance in our body. Similarly, the practice of forgiveness, which we start to learn or that the forgiveness basically can help us to have a good health. And finally, as I am trying to tell you, is that whatever we are talking about in terms of our health, environmental health, social health, which is not in our control, because society is come up with many people and controlled by many people, contributed by many people, as well as for the environment, total climatic condition. But at individual level, we can control our spirituality, and with this spiritual control, we basically can control physical or psychological well-being of our individuals, and which will have an impact in our society. And this can be achieved more effectively for all of us, that we all have a blessed Ramadan. And thank you very much.